Hello, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Plymouth. I'm your host, Derek Brindisi, and Town Manager for the Town of Plymouth. This afternoon we have two guests, the Chair of the Select Board, Betty Cavacco, and one of our local residents and activists, Sarah Levenson. So thank you both for coming in this afternoon.
Thanks.
Happy to be here.
So let's get started. So I thought it would be good to kind of frame up as we roll into town meeting. So town meeting is this coming Saturday. It's going to start at 8 a.m. at Plymouth North High School. There's about 20 different articles on the agenda for town meeting members to vote on. But one of the items that we've talked a lot about in the past 2 weeks is Article 19. And that's a focus on the ability to increase parking fines here in the town. So I thought it'd be good if the chairman came on to talk a little bit about what that means, and then Sarah, for you to come on to talk about the experience that you guys have had, certainly in the Morton Park area. So Betty, if we could go directly to you, can you kind of describe to the folks what this article means? And the other issue too is we want to inform town meeting members and the general public as we lead into town meeting why this is so important.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So what this article means, honestly, is to raise parking fines for specific districts that require beach stickers. And the only district that we have right now that does require beach stickers is the Whitehorse Beach Parking District. And one of the things that, not only our police, but our private security firm that has been ticketing these vehicles over this past season have noticed that when they go to a vehicle and they say, you don't have a sticker, you're going to get a ticket, the first response is, well, how much is the ticket? And they tell them it's $50. And they're like, oh, that's 5 of us, that's $10 a piece. So that has become a little bit more problematic. So to be able to kind of negate all those issues by raising the fees anywhere upwards from $50 to $200, I think is important to, kind of continue on the path that we're going that will allow our residents the priority to enjoy some of our natural resources.
Yeah, and that's important to note. So just so the folks that are watching understand, the current laws constrain us. We're only, under the statutes, we are only able to fine a person who's been illegally parking up to $50, as the chairman pointed out. And that's only in the Whitehorse Beach parking area. So right now there's only, throughout the remainder part of town, I believe it's $30, right? Mm-hmm. And so the board had made, I think, Betty, it was a couple years ago, the board, through the creation of the Whitehorse Beach Parking District, had voted to have a separate and distinct parking fine for Whitehorse Beach. And that's how you got the $50, correct?
Correct.
And so this article would then allow the board, if they chose to raise those parking fines up to $150. But Betty, if you could talk a little bit about, because when we went to A&F, and then when we went to COPC, there was a lot of concern that this would impact all of the town of Plymouth.
Right.
And not specifically to certain areas. Can you try to help us just pull that apart?
Yeah, so that is actually not the case at all. So one of the things that folks have to realize, everything we do, every kind of district or anything that we make will always go through town meeting. So as of right now, town meeting only has the Whitehorse Beach Parking District. That's what they've approved. So when we go back to try to get, whether it's Morton Park or Fresh Pond or any of our ponds and beaches, that will also have to be an action that goes through town meeting. So for the concern of, downtown and all that, those concerns are really moot because they are not a parking district and they do not require a beach sticker to be able to park.
Yeah, and I think that's important. So, and I'll read that section. So again, just so folks are aware, the administration and finance, they voted against this article.
Right.
And they voted against it for two reasons. One, they thought it was too broad in scope. Mm-hmm. And so what the select board did, hearing them, the following evening, the select board included and I'm going to read this section to folks, within parking districts in town that require a beach sticker, to try to narrow down the focus of this article.
Right.
And so to your point, that this would only be in parking districts that require a beach sticker. So right now we only have one, and
Correct.
that's White Horse Beach.
Correct.
So those are some of the things we really want folks to be aware of, that this is not a broad strategy
Right.
across the town. This is focused on problematic areas that we have experienced this past summer, specifically in Morton Park, Drew Road, and Fresh Pond have had some, I
And
would
White
say,
Pond.
excuse me?
White
and,
Pond.
And White Pond. And actually, some would say that this whack-a-mole phenomenon may take place, and then once we remedy those areas, we may see, say, Hedges Pond become an area. So I think that's something that we're going to have to lean forward and look at a little bit further down the road as far as how we remedy all these problems. But that's a good transition into why Sarah's here today. So, Sarah, you have been in front of the Select Board, geez, I would say,
Too many times.
yeah, a number of times this past summer. And just to inform the Select Board as to what the neighborhood has experienced in Morton Park. You want to describe some of your
Sure.
experiences?
So it is a beautiful place. It's very, very popular. I run through there. My neighbors walk their dogs through there. We used to go down and enjoy the beach, and now we can only do that with our kids on the weekdays, unfortunately. So it's a very, very popular spot, and it has been an issue. The overcrowding has been an issue for probably at least 10 years, and the town has been outstanding trying to find that solution. The most recent solution was a couple years ago where they implemented a 100-car maximum per day in the park. So what happens now is they pay a one fee per car, no matter how many folks are in it. And once 100 cars is reached, no more cars for the day. Right now, the side beaches are reserved for residents with beach stickers. The main beach is where folks who are not Plymouth residents or don't have a beach sticker can be. The 100-car max almost always hits just the main beach, and the side beaches are totally useless. But that's where we start seeing a problem with parking and the surrounding properties.
Right.
I live outside the park, and that's where we see most of the chaos. So once that 100-car limit is reached, or even if they just choose not to pay, they don't want to pay the $20 fee, or I don't even know what it is, I think it's about $20 per car, they try to find someplace else to park. That's usually Thoreau Road, which is a very small, thin road. They'll park all the way down both sides. I've seen it where they're parked on both sides all the way down Thoreau. Morton Park Road, in the woods along the paths, and on private property out on Summer Street. And it's really, really frustrating, really frustrating. There's some photos I think I've shown you guys of what we deal with out there, but it's chaotic. This would be one of many solutions that need to happen.
Sure.
It's a multi-layer solution that's needed, but it's very timely in that we can at least make it much less attractive to abuse those properties outside the park.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then we've said to both COPC and A&F that this is one tool in our toolbox to try to get at some of these issues that are, multi-layered. Can you describe, because I know you've been in front of the board and you've shown videos and pictures, just what that experience is like. I think there was one picture of an individual, carrying a grill, a propane
Yes.
grill from the top of the street all the way down into the park.
Correct. So that's any warm Saturday or Sunday, this is what you see, and it's not uncommon. It's just about every weekend. We had one, I was coming back from the gym and I pulled down Morton Park Road to see what was going on, and my sister lives on Thoreau, so I was taking a left down there. Took me a long time just to get from Summer Street to that left on Thoreau. I went down and did what I had to do at her house, and when I came back up, I got stuck at the top of the road. There was a truck with a full-size grill, and I don't mean like a big truck grill. I mean a full-size big grill that most people's grills aren't this big in the back of a truck. The town workers are so lovely, those recreation department folks. They work so hard. They finally got this gentleman to leave. So he pulled out of Morton Park Road, took a left on Summer Street, pulled on private property, then pulled out onto Summer Street and parked the car, had one of his family members take the grill out, and they wheeled that grill from Summer Street all the way down Morton Park Road.
And then it sounds like they probably went and parked somewhere illegally by, Summer
Yes.
Street or by
Yes.
the old is it Stop and Shop?
Shaw's,
that
yes.
used to be there. So clearly, the pictures that you have demonstrated in the past, I've seen similar pictures. Almost, it looks like Morton Park, but it actually came from Fresh Pond, where there were vehicles parked up and down the neighborhood because similar issue. Once the parking lot is at full capacity, especially on those hot weekends, then the individuals, they've driven whatever distance that they've come from, they got their coolers packed, they have their children in the vehicle, they're just going to park anywhere. And in the situation, whether it's Morton Park or Fresh Pond, they would rather just pay the $25. And I think that's exactly to your point, the chairman made, that it costs $25 or $20 to get into the park. So you might as well just pay the $25 fine to the outside of the park.
Right.
So, Betty, one thing I did want to bring up, because it's come up on numerous occasions, and it's concerning when I hear certain committees say, we'll just tow their vehicles. Forget about parking fines, just tow their vehicles. Do you have a response to those comments?
Well, people were afraid that $150 or $200, because I want to go the max, whatever we can. And we have a $200 fine structure for if you park in a handicap spot.
Right.
So they think that it's too, it's too strict, or it's too much, and it's too much of an inconvenience. Well, I would think that getting a car towed is pretty inconvenient when you're a bunch of kids that are looking for their car, and now they have to find the place that it got towed to, get a ride to the place,
Right.
and it's a lot more than $150 or $200 to recapture your vehicle after it's towed. So one of the things, to Sarah's point, is that luckily, and unfortunately, or fortunately now, we do have somewhat of a footprint of what needs to be done. So I don't think Morton Park will be the only one next. I think this is going to have to be something that we have to implement throughout all of our parks and beaches, because we're no longer a town that has 25,000 people.
Right.
And as an elected official, it is my job to make sure that the priority of our residents are taken care of. And I feel that our residents should be the priority people that are at all of our parks and beaches. So I'm sorry some people don't feel that way, but honestly, we have to take care of our residents. We're upwards of over 60,000 residents. We're probably approaching 70 pretty soon. We're not big enough to handle all of our residents and all of outside people. And we have to put the priority first. And as far as I'm concerned, our residents are our priority.
So then that then goes into this is a multi-layered approach. So we're talking about parking fines, but it sounds like you're saying that one of your recommendations would be that we strongly consider these places to recreate here in town for residents only.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I hear these committees talk about we need to be a more friendly community, we can't have this type of parking fine structure because it's unfriendly. Well, I would counter that and say, well, what's more unfriendly than towing someone's vehicle?
Right.
Can you imagine, and I don't care if you're a resident or non-resident, but you have 3 kids in tow, you have all your coolers after spending 8 days on the beach or in the pond,
Yep.
and then you come back and you have everything around you and there's no vehicle there. So to me, when I hear some of these arguments of why Article 19 should not be supported, it's interesting, because a lot of their strategies are either more strict or less friendly.
Right.
So, Sarah, getting back to where Betty was going with potentially parking fines and then being resident only, I know that you have been talking with the chair from the Natural Resources and Beach Committee and others who worked in the Morton Park area. Do you have any other thoughts? Because I think it's important to talk about that this article is really important. It's not a silver bullet, and I don't want people to think that this is going to solve our problems. So do you have other thoughts of how we're going to use this strategy along with others in order to get at the issues?
Yes, I do, and we've had some great conversations among the neighbors, both inside the park and outside. And whatever solutions we come up with, which I can talk about for a minute, have to be in tandem with that. Because if we create a solution inside the park, but we don't enforce illegal parking outside, we're in trouble, and it'll make it just worse where I live. So, a couple of the options that we've talked about are Plymouth residents only, like Madam Chair talked about, where just Plymouth residents. You have to be either in a party with someone who's from Plymouth or show your license or what have you, or fishermen, a licensed fisherman, because they're stocked ponds. That's one option. The other option is significant per person fees. So right now they're just paying one very nominal fee per car. If we charge per person, including walk-ins, I know it's steep, it doesn't sound very friendly, but if you think back to one of the town, the precinct chairs talked about how difficult the cleanup is after these weekend nights. It's really, really rough. We need that extra revenue to replace the picnic benches that are ruined, to hire more lifeguards, to get more bathhouses. I mean, little porta potties there. They're using the woods as a bathroom. I see it when I run. So there's so much we need, and that would help supplement some of that revenue there. But I think residents only would be an ideal place to take a look at to see whether it's possible. And if we could limit it to residents and licensed fishermen, I think we'd be in pretty good shape. If that's not possible, we look potentially at just charging per person. The key there is going to be enforcing it, right? We've got to have an adult person working for the town or representing the town, checking to see where's your visible sign of having paid, like a wristband or what have you, multiple times a day. If we don't do that, then the issue outside the park is going to be 10 times as bad as it is now, because if you just can't drive in, it's got to include walk-ins, or we're going to be in trouble.
Right. So that's a great point. That, you know, even if it sounds like what I'm hearing is that even if the committee came together, working with the residents, and identified all these different solutions to manage inside the park, that still leaves us to what happens on the outside. So you can make things more restrictive or less restrictive as you want inside the park. But once you hit that maximum, whatever that number is, right, I think we were 150 cars 5 years ago and more, we're down to 100.
Yeah.
That has exacerbated the problem outside of the park. So you're right. So again, this is a multifaceted approach. Increased parking fines is one of many different strategies in order to get at this. So I wanted to touch on, I didn't have a chance to talk about the second point A and F made. So the first point, they had 2 points. One, that they thought the original article was too broad. We touched on that we made it more detailed, and that this is only going to focus on areas that require a beach sticker. The other piece they said, and this is going to go to the chairman, that $150 they thought was too much of a ceiling, and that again it would affect the entire town. But we've already addressed the entire town piece.
Right.
So what we tried to explain to them during this conversation is that the $150 is a ceiling, and I know you mentioned that 200. You would be in favor of $200, but the board doesn't have to go to $150.
Right.
It could be anything in between.
Right.
So I know you can't speak for all your board members, but if this were to pass, do you think that the board would go right to 150, or do you think there'd be an incremental approach to see how we could try to get at the same problem with a less restrictive solution?
Well, you know how I am,
Right.
fortunately or unfortunately. I go right, let's go right to the top. Go big or go home. That's the way I look at it. I mean, it would really be a discussion that the board would certainly have to, it would be an agenda item. We'd have to have this discussion. But honestly, when you have a $50 or $100, ticket, and there's 5 people,
Right.
it's $20. I mean, I'd probably pay $20 to go to a nice beach and get a ticket. So I think that, one of the things that folks don't realize, since we implemented all this stuff at Whitehorse Beach, We have gotten so much communication from residents that say, I haven't been down to White Horse Beach in decades, and now I can go there. So, and I want the same thing for Morton Park, for Fresh Pond, for wherever we go. But I think it's important that folks know that, you know, putting in these strict policies, and they're strict policies, but, you know, folks know that we had huge issues down at White Horse Beach, and it had been going on for more than a decade.
Right.
Decades, because there's old parking groups and old parking committees that have tried, you know, to move things like that. So I think that, you know, I think we can fix this by the season, by the new season. I think putting everything in place, my opinion, without talking to any of my board members about, I would go for the maximum, whatever that is. Now, if you want to talk about unfriendly and this and that, it's very difficult. And Chief Flynn has the numbers of if it were a Plymouth resident that was arrested or out of town, and there really weren't any Plymouth residents. So, but talk about unfriendly. It's unfriendly to have our residents afraid to come out of their house. It's unfriendly to have someone urinating on your front lawn. It's very unfriendly to have someone get caught having sex in your outdoor shower. Those are unacceptable. And none of our residents should have to fear for anything. You know, they're there. They're the ones that pay for everything that we have for our natural resources and beaches and ponds. It's our residents paying for that. So we have to take on their consideration much more deeply than we do now. So I don't want to be that, oh, she doesn't care about, you know, people from outside of town. I kind of have to, my commitment is for the town of Plymouth. And although, you know, I've actually given my beach passes to friends that, not even friends, like complete strangers that say, I really want to go to White Horse Beach, I have this. I send them my address, park at my house. Here's a beach pass if you want to park closer. And you know what? They're like so appreciative. And everybody in our area is like that. So I think it's just, we really have to concentrate.
That's an interesting point, because, I mean, that's what the board is there to do. That's what the administration is there to do. When they hear problems, when they hear concerns, their job is to address those concerns. And we heard it over and over and over
All
this
summer,
summer long.
yeah.
And so, I mean, your points about folks urinating on front lawn, right? What is more unfriendly than that? And so it would have been irresponsible of the administration not to bring this article forward. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we don't listen to the residents that live here and the taxpayers that want to see change, then they don't
What
need
are we
us.
doing?
Right. What are we doing? We're doing
what are
nothing.
we?
Right. So no. So that is that's a great point. And the White Horse Beach, you're 100% right. Like, it's a model of success. I talked to Chief Flynn this year after the July 3rd events. So, yeah, as we all know, White Horse Beach, their big day of the year is July 3rd.
It's like Christmas.
And he said to me, it was so quiet down this year. He's thinking about reducing his staffing next year because it was that quiet.
Wonderful.
And so if there's nothing else that is more of a template or a gold standard that we can follow, is what had happened over the course of the last 5 years at White Horse Beach. So I'm hopeful that town meeting will pass this. It'll give us,
Me too.
you know, Sarah, as you pointed out, one more strategy to try to unravel all these problems. But I'm looking forward to folks having the debate and having the discussion at town meeting.
Yeah.
So we're going to be heading towards the end of this. Is there anything, Sarah, that you wanted to say before we move on to the next item?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know this, you've heard my voice 1,000 times. You've heard the Friends of Morton Park speak, and it can be a little bit like that gnat that's kind of floating around, and I really appreciate how committed you are. It's obvious, and you've already taken measures to remedy this, and I know we're going to fix it, and I'm really grateful, and we are here to help, all of us.
Great, thank you.
I'm actually excited because I would like to speak to this article at town meeting and yield any questions that they have as a collaborative whole. So I think there was a little bit of misinformation out there. So I think if we can rectify it, town meeting, they represent the residents. they need to know that this is a resident concern, and I think they do know that, and I'm confident that they'll take the right action.
Yeah, and again, that's exciting that we're going to be able to have this conversation, this debate on Saturday.
In person.
In person, that's right. Good point. We're going to finally be back to in-person town meeting.
Yeah.
So town meeting, just as a reminder, is this coming Saturday at 8 a.m., Plymouth North High School. In the auditorium will be the town meeting members. There'll be a separate room for those individuals that are concerned about COVID, social distancing, things of that nature. But before we break, I would want to just encourage, because I hope town meeting members watch today's segment, and I would ask them, they have 4 days, to reach out to the folks that live in the neighborhoods of Morton Park, in Drew Road, in Fresh Pond, and ask them what their experience has been like. Because this article is specifically to remedy those problems. So I hope town meeting members, I hope they do their homework and they get a better sense of what the lifestyle is during the summer months in those neighborhoods. So thank you both for coming this afternoon. More to come in the next 4 or 5 days. So I want to thank you all for listening to today's show. If you want to learn more about today's segment, I encourage you to go to PAC TV. You will see the link to this segment, or go to the town's website as well, and you can either watch it online or on the television. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I'll see you all next week.